Hey guys, it's Emma Vigling with TYT Politics. I hope everyone's having a good and safe day. An update on yesterday's story. I apologize. Earlier I reported that there was gunshots from the terrorist yesterday, and that's what NBC News and the Associated Press were reporting early on, and I relayed that information to you. I corrected myself in the new video that we put up. Just wanted to give you that disclaimer that I thought they were reliable sources, should have waited a little bit longer. I really apologize for relaying that information to you at first. So the update is that the immigrant from Uzbekistan, it's hard to say, he was an immigrant from Uzbekistan, was the perpetrator of killing 8 people in New York City yesterday. I live within a 10-block radius of what happened yesterday, so it was a little disconcerting and very scary. He crashed a truck from Home Depot through a crowded bike path. I run on that bike path. Followed by plans from the Islamic State, ISIS, put on their website. So his name is Saifullo Saipov. He was 29, and he immigrated to the United States from the Central Asian nation of Uzbekistan in 2010. The attack was the deadliest on New York City since September 11th, 2001. It was actually next to the 9/11 memorial. I live streamed the event, or not the event, but the aftermath of the horrific carnage, and you can see the Freedom Tower, where the building built upon ground zero right next to it. So after Trump was railing against ISIS on the campaign trail, saying that it was invading America, it appears to be the first real ISIS truck attack in America, as has been seen in Europe. But it is important to remember that Governor Andrew Cuomo said yesterday that, quote, the best evidence we have is that he was a lone wolf model, meaning he wasn't an agent sent by ISIS. That is the best evidence that they have at this point. Information can change. I want to put that caveat in. Information can change. So, the NYPD Commissioner John Miller said this: the gist of the note was that the Islamic State would endure forever. He left a note, this perpetrator, this terrorist, and he appears to have followed almost exactly the instructions that ISIS has put out on social media channels to its followers. So, again, appears to have taken instructions from ISIS on social media, but we do not know if ISIS is directly involved in the attack, although Governor Cuomo said that it appears to be a lone wolf situation at this particular moment. So, virtually all the deadly attacks since September 11th, 2001 have been carried out by homegrown extremists. This is an exception to that pattern. He legally entered the United States from Uzbekistan 7 years ago. And before you say, well, you want gun control, but you don't want to do anything about trucks. No, I don't. I think I want to combat how we view international terrorism. We need to stop bombing innocent civilians, allowing for this rage to fester up, and for murderous people to use this as an excuse to act out their sick, disgusting fantasies and channel their rage into murder, mass murder. Because, do you know this? President Donald Trump has killed more innocent civilians in Iraq and Syria combating ISIS than President Obama did in his entire presidency already with drones. So, understand that these people are not insane as an entire group. They are using their religion as an ideology to funnel their rage because they go to weddings and they see their cousins getting killed from drones in the sky. That's what ISIS is. It is an illogical, insane fringe group sprouted from real pain. And we have to combat that pain to stop the violence. But the media doesn't agree with me. Why does some of the media push for war when 8 people die in a truck attack, but when 56 people get shot and killed, they say, don't politicize? I hear it endlessly on CNN. When Donald Trump said God 80 times when he went out after Las Vegas and said, "Praise God, God be with you." He didn't say anything about gun control. He didn't say anything about policy. They all praised him, wall to wall. Every pundit on CNN, the liberal Clinton CNN, praised him because he didn't say anything about actual legislation. He just acted presidential. So what is it? Are we not supposed to politicize when any tragedy happens? Because Trump is politicizing right now, saying that we need to end this program and that program. And the media is complicit, saying we need to do a war on ISIS. They're participating in that. Do you know what a war on ISIS means? It means more American lives lost. It means invading more countries. But they are okay with politicizing that, just not the politicization of actually acting for gun control, because that might ruffle some feathers in the establishment and might make them seem liberal, which they are so afraid of since the corporate media has been essentially bullied into believing that they're liberal when they just are not. And by the way, this entire narrative is pushed by them by design, because they're actually okay with more war. They are crisis porn industry. They're a crisis porn industry. They essentially profit off of fear. Their ratings go up, and they're doing okay when that happens. So I think we all have to remember that it is by design. The media does, there have been studies, give considerably more coverage to terrorist attacks by Muslims, particularly if the perpetrator is foreign-born, than to attacks by anyone else, according to a new study by researchers at Georgia State University. Muslims commit far fewer terrorist attacks than non-Muslims, the research found. But when attacks by Muslims do happen, they are written about 4.5 times more than other attacks. And actually, the National Bureau of Economic Research and the Cato Institute, a conservative think tank, found that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than people born in the United States. Yes, that is the Cato Institute. So Donald Trump saying that we need to do merit-based immigration, merit-based, what does that mean? It just means you decide who you want to put into this country. Means immigrants are not even committing more crimes, so there's no need to do that merit-based. Yes, this man came to the United States illegally, but we cannot prevent every crazy person from coming into this country. And again, I know that they're going to use this as a way to scapegoat an entire religion, and fake liberals like Bill Maher will go on TV and say, it's because Muslims are inherently more violent, and ignore entire systemic violence by the United States upon those countries, and why ISIS and extremist groups are a byproduct of our systemic violence. I'm saying it. Sorry. They'll ignore that entire reality and then just push this narrative. Hate crimes against Muslims, by the way, up 560% last year in New York State alone, according to Afar Nasher, Executive Director of the Council of American Islamic Relations. According to the same group nationally, the number of anti-Muslim hate crimes in the United States rose 91% in the first half of the year compared with the same period in 2016. 91%. They rose nationally. I wonder if President Trump, has anything to do with that. The number of bias incidents in the first half of 2017 also rose by 24% compared with the first months of 2016, as CAIR said, Council on American Islamic Relations. Additionally, the investigative fund at the Nation Institute examined terrorism in the United States from 2008 to 2016. Far-right plots and attacks outnumber Islamic incidents almost 2-to-1. Looking at both plots and attacks carried out, the group tracked 201 terrorist incidents on U.S. soil from January 2008 to the end of 2016. The database shows 115 cases of right-wing extremists, from white supremacists to militias to sovereign citizens, compared to 63 cases by Islamic extremists. Incidents from left-wing extremists, which include eco-terrorists and animal rights militants, were comparatively rare, with 19 incidents. But apparently, right-wing extremists and left-wing extremists are the same, and Islamic extremists are the worst of them all, apparently, even though the numbers don't bear that out. The investigative fund's findings reflect those of previous studies of domestic terrorism. The New America Foundation, for instance, which has been tracking deadly terror incidents on U.S. soil since the September 11th attacks, also finds an almost 2-to-1 ratio of attacks by far-right extremists to Islamic extremists. Hey, right-wingers, your rhetoric has consequences. And when you say it's an entire group of people, it justifies and allows and gives a green light to the hawks on the right and the left to go and bomb people in other countries behind a computer screen with little to no consequences for them, and sending your sons and your daughters overseas to bleed for their hatred, which is perpetuated in the media. It 4.5 times more likely, or not more likely, they report on it 4.5 times as much if it's a Muslim person. This is by design. It's an othering of people. When the person doesn't look like us, we can say, well, we're not really them, right? That's an other group. They're more insidious than us. They're worse than us because they read a different book, a different insane magical book. If you have systemic violence pushed upon you, if you are in countries where there is a huge wealth disparity, you are going to find an excuse to act out with violence, and that is what ISIS is. It is a desperate, disgusting attempt to make themselves more relevant because they feel powerless, and pushing our violence upon them is going to do nothing more than exacerbate that, and the media continues to push for it. And I really do think it's by design. I think that they don't mind the war because they can profit off of it. Conspiracy theorists, all I want, there's a reason that they have a certain brand of liberal and a certain brand of conservative on there all the time. It's groupthink. Again, it may not be, hey, we want to push for more war, but the executives, like the CBS guy who said, hey, Trump's been good for business. Hey, war's kind of good for business. While Trump goes on Twitter spouting that we need to do something about Muslims, in June, the Trump administration reportedly dropped funding for a nonprofit, Life After Hate, which is a group that helps people leave the white supremacist movement. So even though that is a larger problem in the country, right-wing terrorism by a 2-to-1 ratio, we're going to drop funding from groups that combat that. One, it's Trump likes white supremacy. Two, it's also that they think that the only way to stop any kind of violence is from just beating people down with our force. And you know what? That doesn't work. I love how I saw Mike Pence tweet out, war on terror, we're commemorating that it started 30 years ago. And I replied, yeah, you've been super successful since then. So you should be celebrating it. That's because you can't end a movement in this region that is sparked up, that has existed in direct response to essentially American imperial power. Violence begets violence, and if we continue to essentially try to stomp them out, more people are just going to sprout up. We have to respond to this in a different way. And I don't know how someone like Mike Pence can see that 30-year mark and say, let's continue more of what we've been doing. Let's double down on the drone strikes, on the violence. And Democrats are guilty of this as well. So, while this entire swath of the Republican Party, these bigots that support Donald Trump, I know we're not talking about the general election, we're talking about right now, the people that are yay MAGA. And those fake liberals like Bill Maher and Sam Harris who say that Muslims, because of their book, are inherently more violent, we have to stand up and say, no, be a little bit smarter and be a little bit more critical of your government, which has been an active participant in creating this violence. And someone in the media needs to be a voice that says that. Because the corporate media is not saying it. All right, guys, have a good day.